Welcome back to Beholder to No One, a D&D podcast. Today, I'm here with Bobby from GM Table, and we are discussing just TTRPG as like a full-time or just as a job, so to speak. Let's just jump in. Like, give us some little bit of background of what you do.
Okay. Well, the first thing I'll throw in is expect to be paid under minimum wage no matter how high up the ladder you are. If you like break it down by hour.
Yeah.
Because even if you're doing really well, especially once you're high enough up, you'll be paying other people. You're not making minimum wage. Think of it like owning your own restaurant. It's just you do it because you love it. And if you don't love it, it's going to be rough. But what I do a lot, because if you want this to be even like part-time pay, you're doing like 5 jobs. I have the YouTube channel, I have the Twitch channel, I have paid games, I have now a podcast. I'm about to have a second podcast. There's a ton that I'm doing.
Yeah, we don't turn off.
No. I mean, I came from a film background. Like my degree is in film, so I'm used to production. I'm used to constantly making and constantly creating, and yeah, it just is what it is. You don't get to turn off with this.
I know that you were the second person I've known that does paid GMing. The first person, I don't know them, obviously, but I saw it with Satine Phoenix that it was an option on our Patreon. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I would love to do that one day. I don't have the confidence to do that. But what if I got paid blah, blah, blah? It's only 3 hours. And I'm like, no, wait, I have to prepare a lot. And I'd have to prepare really, really well to make sure it was good enough that they would be willing to continue to pay me to do it. Otherwise, bye.
I have a couple secrets for how that's actually worth my time per investment that I can go into. But first of all, if you're doing streams and you're taking tips or subs or anything on Twitch for your game, congratulations, you're a paid GM. Your players might not be paying you, but somebody's paying you because they enjoy the stuff you make. It's not as huge as what people think. It's also becoming way more common, and I'm seeing a huge boom in it post quarantine and everything.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I've been doing it about 2 years, and I didn't go, I'm gonna do this. I had fans of my YouTube who were already patrons. I had this little tiny Patreon, and they were like, we want you to do games. And one of them, I'd been able to get into some one shots and stuff, and he really enjoyed it. He's like, we want you to do more games. I'm like, look, I'm running. At this point, I was just running a YouTube. And somehow I was going, I don't have time for other stuff. But look, I'm running YouTube. I don't have time for other stuff. I got to spend time with my family. Like, I can't just tell my wife, hey, I got my home games and these. Like, hey, cool. My fans want me to run a game. Here's another 4 hours a week. And they went, would your wife be cool with it if we paid you for that time, though? And even then, I spent like a month thinking about if I wanted to take that leap.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't jump into it. And when I did, I wanted to do it right. We set up a separate Patreon. And I did it through Patreon because I wanted monthly billing without having to hassle people to pay me. Like, hey, where's my money?
Yeah, like, hey, pay me. No, we're not starting this game until Joe sends me that $5 on PayPal. Come on.
Yeah, and it does. I mean, by doing Patreon, they're gonna take their cut, and then when you shift stuff to PayPal, they're gonna take your cut. Like, when you see how much they make, that gets chopped up a lot before it reaches the end user. But I wanted to do that. Originally, I had a couple other friends who were like, oh yeah, we'll hop in, because I wanted to do a group of people with the idea of like, if I'm sick, I can just have my buddy fill in for me, so you never miss a game, no matter what.
Yeah.
As with many things in the creative field, your friends will sometimes very much let you down. It is now just me.
Yeah.
But it's worked out. I ended up doing like a 1.5 year ETU campaign, which is what started with So Savage, World East Texas University. And it just started with, all right, I'm going to charge $25 a seat for twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
Because I tried to factor, and I'm like, if I do that, I'm making at least this much an hour, because I'm making less than minimum wage once you break everything down, but there's still like that minimum amount of money I need to make per hour. Now you're seeing people who payment also does this great thing of if people pay even $1, they're way more likely to show up.
Mhm.
So you're seeing a lot more sites pop up where it's like, oh, it's $3 a session. It's basically the same fees as some cons
Yeah.
to do it. And with those, cool, you're a paid GM. You're doing well. I'd say that's just like saying you're on Twitch, you're a paid GM. You're never going to get to like making a living charging $15 a session. It's just there's not enough time in the week to run enough sessions to make a paycheck.
Right.
Hell, at mine, I'm currently doing basically $50 a session for a group because I don't do per seat things because then you get one person drops and you got to shift the group. And I'm just doing full groups now. And even then, like I'm cutting some out of time and it's a nice like part-time job as far as the paycheck, but it's not enough to be a full-time job unless you're charging hundreds of dollars per session. And I just personally I can't do it.
Yeah, I know that's about what like Satine level type people
Mhm.
do. And I'm like, oh, okay, they can get away with it though. They like
Yes.
have that clout. They have that I don't know if clout's the right word, but they have that like
It's celebrity.
yeah,
You're paying for Satine Phoenix, not the game.
true.
Now, once you're in and you're invested, you're also paying for the game, but you are willing to front that money because of the person.
Right. One day.
I wouldn't be able to charge 50 if it weren't me. And I'm small, but I worked really hard for years building up in the Savage Worlds community. People really knew me in there. So I could charge it. Again, I didn't even do this until somebody asked me,
Right.
what if we pay you? So coming in as a completely unknown, you could get people willing to do it, but yeah, charging enough for it is so rough.
My goal is eventually to do this part-time and
Mhm.
enough to get paid to go to part-time with my full-time job. Like I know realistically I will always have to have a part-time job on the side, but purely for health insurance reasons and for no other reason. But I know that that's 100%, but I'm willing to put in full-time
Yeah.
work if I can make enough to justify going part-time with my real pay.
Yes. I will say, I'm also coming from a very privileged kind of space in this. My wife has a state job with really good, cheap state insurance.
Mhm.
We had a daughter who turned out to be special needs. And not only would it be if I worked, we have to put her in daycare, we'd have to put her in daycare that could handle her special needs. And at that point, the amount I would have to be making to break even
Right.
just wasn't worth it.
I've heard that with a couple of stay-at-home parents. The reason why they stayed home was because they had not just one kid, but they had multiple children, and the cost of daycare for them to work was more than what they would make working. So they're
Exactly.
like, what's the point?
It's a net loss at that point. So might as well. And that's where it came in. Now I will say, even before I had my kid, I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing paid games for a couple years, but I was doing, for lack of a better word, games journalism for TTRPGs. I was writing
Mhm.
articles for TTRPG websites. I was ghostwriting a lot in things I can't talk about because of contracts. I've written in a lot more
Damn
places than people
contracts.
would realize. Yeah, NDAs are a hell of a thing.
It's like, but I want to brag that that was me and I'm awesome. Come on.
Oh no, I want to be able to tell you how horrible some of the really cheap, shady people are.
Oh,
The great
okay.
ones are really, really good, but some of them are shady. It's actually the reason why I then went, I'm just gonna make my own blog. Like just screw it. I know I'm not gonna get paid worth anything. I'm gonna make my own blog. And realistically, when I did it, I should have went, screw it, I'm gonna make my own YouTube. And I would have been about 5 years ahead of the game on YouTube
Live and learn.
because I'm behind the ball on all of it. But I was like in a busted laptop. I did the whole trap of my gear's not good enough. I'll do it when my gear's good enough. And then
Mhm.
eventually I went, screw it, I'm just doing it with the gear I had. And it did well, but I was already years behind everyone else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I first started doing the writing side of things 9 years ago. And I'm now to the point where I'll talk some figures also so you can get realistic here. On a bad month, I'll make $250. On a good month, I'll make $600 to $700. Now, that's not counting book sales because I have some books out and I'll get residuals in on that. Or
Hmm.
if I got like a very specific gig, these are the Twitch, YouTube, Patreon numbers combined,
Right.
which are what I consider my stable, quote unquote. Obviously, it shifts stable income,
That's fair.
and it's not much. It's I but there's months where I'd make more if I worked at Walmart, but I'd also work at Walmart and I'd be miserable. So
Yeah, who wants to do that? Except for those people who work at Walmart. Then
yeah.
kudos to you for having a job.
Oh, definitely. I was a cart boy for Sam at Sam's Club until they worked me till I got heat stroke and they fired me for getting heat stroke. So yeah.
And my husband worked at Walmart for 3 nights. It was a secondary full-time job. It was not
Yeah.
supposed to be full-time. It was supposed to be a part-time job. And he was put on the schedule for 37 hours overnight. And he was like, he had like 6 hours that he could sleep. And my husband very much is not somebody who could just go to sleep on time. He's very much, I'm going to stay awake
Yes.
until I'm sleepy. And you can't do that if you have to work from 8 to 5 and then work from 10 to 7. Like, that's not feasible. So after 3 days, I'm like, it's not worth it, babe. Just quit.
I used to have that grind. I've been a deli manager for Albertsons. I was a line manager for Red Lobster.
Oh, I haven't heard of Albertsons in so long.
I know the one that I was like, it's back my hometown by where my mom still lives, and it's not even an Albertsons anymore. And I'm like, but I know this place. The actual store hasn't changed. You just changed the name outside. But yeah, I realize I've done a lot of work in food. But yeah, it's getting into this side of things is no different well, not no different, but it's really not very different than going, I want a career in film. I want a career in radio. Any of the creative routes. And the thing is also you say something like, I want a career in film. And everybody goes, you want to be a movie star? That's not likely to ever happen. You can also have a career in film, being a sound guy, and make a decent living. If you don't expect to be famous, you just become a journeyman. You do
Right.
your work and you go home. And you can do that within the RPG industry if you learn like the basics of copywriting or editing or any kind of layout work. You can get the work.
Yeah, even like transcribing that.
Yeah.
I was looking up, my goal is to transcribe all of our episodes that we have. And I was like, okay, but that's a lot. I already have 33 episodes, and I know that's not as much as some people, but like that's still a lot of hours. That's at least 33 hours of episodes that I would be single-handedly typing. Let me just look on Fiverr and see how much a transcriber. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money. Like, it would be like
Oh, yeah.
$200. No, $360 minimum for one actual play episode. And I'm just like, nope, I'm good. I'll type it up myself.
Yeah, paying people to do stuff on actual plays is a pain. We're currently looking at like if I want to do the second podcast, I'm gonna need an editor. Like I need a second person editing, but editors are all by the hour. And it's like one episode is 3 hours of footage
Yep.
and like a 2-hour finished project. And I got 4 sessions a month.
Yep.
They don't make as much as I need to pay you.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm in the process of building a secondary podcast as well. And one of the things I'm like, who's willing to edit? Because I would hope I'm not the editor on this one as well, please.
Throws some tips at you if you're looking for like if you don't care about it being perfectly balanced audio, but you want it pretty good. I figured out some tips of stuff. You actually use DaVinci Resolve, you use video editing for it because it can do the whole track, and even when you edit, it'll keep the levels, and you can just compress and dynamically compress on the whole track. Save a preset for your podcast level, so you do it once, and then you just turn it on. Did it all for you.
You actually have a second level because you have video to edit, and I
Yeah.
don't, which is definitely a perk.
I will say my edited actual plays, which my Tuesday show, I'm trying not to plug till the end, but I'm also talking about projects I work on, so I don't want
Go
to come
for it.
off as plugs. But like my Tuesday show, Tales from 2000, that is what our podcast is too.
Mhm.
Honestly, I edit it for the audio.
Okay.
because somebody going in to watch an actual play that it was granted, mine are chopped where they're 45-minute episodes because I wanted to make them accessible.
Yeah.
We actually record 2 episodes in a session. Like I figure out the ebb and flow so it doesn't feel like you're just chopping up one session. But at the same time, somebody wanting to go into that, odds are they're listening to it, even if it's on YouTube. We don't do heavy visuals, like we're not cutting the minis or maps or any of that.
That's fair.
So the edits will be like all of a sudden you'll see someone's arm maybe jump because we're all in webcams. We're not moving around a ton anyways. And yes, I could kill myself match cutting and making this as seamless as possible. But at the end of the day, that might make me happier and it might make 0.5% of my audience happier. But 99.5% of my audience, well, actually, 90% of my audience won't even notice. 9.5% of my audience won't care.
Yeah. That's fair. That's completely fair. I know that we use video. We don't record it, but we use video with our actual play. And it's mostly so we could feel like we're at the table.
Yeah.
Which is something we severely all miss. We'll record 2 episodes, and we actually, like, after like an hour and a half, I'll just signal to the DM like, hey, you got 30 minutes to get to a point where we can end the episode. And he will find a way in that next 30 minutes to end it in mostly cliffhangers so far. Ryan is like the god of cliffhangers, and I'm just like, if I had to listen to this, I would just be like, oh, I need more, and that's the whole point, and I get it. But like, I also hate it.
I'm sorry, I must listen to him because he's trying to steal my throne. I pride myself in my cliffhangers.
You can't be the only one with cliffhangers.
I know. It's just you spend enough time in writing, you know those tricks.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you made a good point that I think a lot of people who want to get into this need to know is where you said you signal the GM for 30 minutes in. A lot of the shows you're watching, whether it's tutorial videos on YouTube, actual plays, most of those have a producer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's a player. Most often, especially the really successful ones, it's somebody you don't ever even see. There is more people there than what's in front of the camera.
Yeah.
Now, if you're all virtual like this, having a separate producer is so much harder.
Yeah.
Because when everybody's in a room, you just have somebody behind the computer and everyone else is at the table. But in this, it's got to be a separate person. They're the person who's actually streaming. And we don't have one of those. We should, but we don't. But so many do. So many of these ones who do well have a dedicated person producing, letting people know when times are coming up, managing chat. They're not just a mod. They're in the room handling stuff. They're signaling people that there are tips that have happened that you need to notify. Then you have another person who may be a player, may not, because you don't do it while it's at the table. You have people who are dedicated social media managers.
Mm-hmm.
In almost all of these, they have a dedicated social media manager.
In Critical Role, they have a dedicated lore person now.
Well, Critical Role has the money to have a dedicated everything.
I know, but I'm just saying, to that extreme, like, there's somebody who's dedicated to helping Matt. Like,
yeah,
they do obviously other things. It's Danny. They do other things, obviously, but they also are now the person that helps Matt keep his shit in order, which he needs.
They also have a much bigger brand with how their worlds are going because they have books they have to keep track of. They have comic books they have to keep track of, and everything has to stay in not just what you're seeing. And it's, if you're not used to the production flow of things, you might think, oh, the books and comics they have to make based on what's happening in the show. Sometimes those are already made, and what happens in the show can't go against what's going to come out.
Yeah. I like how Taz did it. Like, they are releasing the graphic novels, which I haven't seen, but I've heard they're fantastic. But they're like 2 seasons, 3 seasons, 4 seasons behind.
Their finished arcs are being converted into graphic novels. And they're being converted into graphic novels, not weeklies that'll eventually get compiled. We took the arc, we made a book that happens to be in the graphic novel format.
Yeah.
And I've seen them. They're gorgeous.
I've seen some of the artwork. It's really pretty.
The Adventure Zone, but that's, again, the guys behind the Adventure Zone have so many years in entertainment. It's insane. They have made so many successful podcasts before this one in different genres.
They've also been doing it for a while too.
Yeah. Well, their legacy, their dad, they grew up with their dad in radio. They grew up around this.
Yeah. That's why it's interesting for me. I do not have a background in this at all. Like I'm doing this because it sounded interesting. I've done YouTube a little bit, but it wasn't like super successful. It was like 300 subscribers. And then this is like, I want to talk about D&D. I'm going to do a thing. And people are like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'll make a podcast. Do you know how to? Not in the slightest.
Honestly, and this isn't undercutting you. You picked the great one to go into. Podcasts are the easiest point of entry.
Mhm.
The market for podcasts, and this is where I'm going into. I'm also a business nerd. You kind of have to be in this field, but the podcast market is hyper saturated, and it's waning a bit, but it's so huge. Who cares? Uh, like you said, all you have to worry about is the audio. Now, granted, in podcasts, they care about clean audio.
Mhm.
Get that shit clean. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss. I just do
Yeah,
it.
go for it.
But hey, you didn't even tell me I had to record my own file ahead of time. I chat.
Yeah.
Hey, I get it. I've been swamped too. But
Yeah, if cursing is fine, I say fuck a
okay,
lot.
okay, cool. Yeah, I set my stuff to be adults only for the Twitch and for all of that, just so I don't have to care.
Ironically, when I first started, I did not curse at all, which is very unlike me. I was very, very trying super hard to be PG-13, and you could tell, like, my friends were like, that's not you. This is so weird.
That's there is a fine. If you want to do this professionally, there is also a fine line between authenticity and marketability.
Yeah.
Cursing will cost you sponsors. It sucks. It will. Now, if you never think you're going to be big enough to worry about sponsors, it's no skin off your back. If you want this to be professional, eventually you're going to have to. But there's wiggle room and it doesn't cost you all the sponsors. Are you okay with that? Because then the big thing is if you can't take that away and not still feel authentic, it won't matter anyways. Because if you don't feel authentic, you're not going to grow. You're not going to get a fan base.
Right. If you don't feel authentic, nobody else is going to want to
Yeah,
listen either.
no one cares. One of the things I constantly say, like, our YouTube is not huge. We're currently just over 2,200. Like, it's small for YouTube. I could be huge if I just made clickbait titles, pay somebody for clickbait thumbnails because my thumbnail game is not very good, and do like D&D and Pathfinder optimization builds. I could do that, and they would go great. They go nuts. It's
Yeah.
not hard. But while that's RPGs, it's not what I want and it's not what I care about. So I'm not going to do it. I'd rather maybe succeed being me than definitely succeed just having a job.
I've seen so many clickbaity things where I'm like, I really want to click it. Damn it. But I know it's going to be fake. But I want to click it just in case it's not fake. And then I click it and I'm like, oh, it's fake.
Even if it's, I mean, clickbait does tend to be fake, but in the RPG world, it can be 100% genuine. But I'll also count it clickbait if it's you very obviously made this just for the views and you don't care.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, a perfect example for this place is people like only going after people that are going to get them views too. When like
Yes.
with the interview style or for TTRPG games, it's like, who's the biggest person that I can go for that will get me the views I want? But at the same time, that feels so, for me at least, I feel it is fake. And I go for people that I know or that people that I've met naturally throughout the world. Like I met you and at first we didn't talk much and then we just started chit chatting just because whatever and we're like da 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 chit chat and suddenly
Because I
it's like
wanted your podcast, Nikki. I literally messaged you going, I want to be on your podcast.
but still like
But then we started talking because
yeah
you open it up and being honest about that also is it's not a bad thing, by the way, people. Like if you want to work with another person, the worst thing they can do is tell you no. And that's only one outcome.
right.
They could also tell you yes. And boom, all of a sudden you got people.
And honestly, like when you first brought that up, I said sure, and then I promptly fucking forgot. that you wanted to be on, honestly. And then
You blew me off.
I didn't do it on purpose. But
It's
then we
cool.
started
It's cool.
talking, and then like my brain is like, oh yeah, I messaged GM Table. I should talk to them. And then I see your post and I start interacting. And then I'm like, I want him on my show. And then I look at your thing. I'm like, oh, we talked about this already.
Yeah, I
My
literally
bad.
messaged you like, you're a friend of Elle. I just did a 3-arc show with Elle because she seemed cool and we got along after that. She said how much she got along with you. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to reach out. We should do this. If you get along with Elle, you and I should get along. Oh, yeah, we definitely should. Silence. It's cool. I've been ghosted. I know how it is.
I never purposely ghost people.
It's fine. No, I get it.
Probably.
Probably. No, we've all done it before, but let's openly say we've never personally done it. So the people who we've done it to don't feel bad. It's okay.
Exactly. If I didn't respond to you, it's not on purpose, maybe.
Maybe. Maybe probably.
Maybe probably. But it's actually been weird because when I first started, I did not know anybody in the TTRPG field.
Yeah.
I did not actively start. I started in December of last year. I didn't actively start acting on Twitter until July. So for that first 5 months, because I took 2-month break, I did nothing on social media. Everybody was like, hey friends, who wants to talk to me this week and listen to me talk about something you are not interested in?
You can go back on my Twitter. I've had the Twitter for a while now because every so often it'd be like, oh, hey, we're going live, or oh, hey, there's a new YouTube video. But I hadn't actively been using Twitter till 4 months ago, I think. It was sometime during quarantine.
Yeah, I made the Twitter when
Yeah.
I was like, just to be sure, I'm gonna make the Twitter, I'm gonna make the Gmail, I'm gonna make all the things and the Facebook group. And so, nope.
So you get the handles.
Exactly. And then suddenly I'm like, I don't want to be on Twitter though. Why do I want to be active on Twitter?
There was like a magic moment where the algorithm kicked in for me because I was on Twitter and like the first month I was miserable because it was the most toxic free. Like I spent most of my time dealing with Facebook BS. And I'm like, what do people say about Twitter? This is worse than Facebook. And Facebook's a cesspool.
Yeah.
And then like the algorithm clicked, and over the next few days, it got less and less. And now it's just all great fucking people. Like all people I know, either I know or are friends of friends, and all of this.
Occasionally it'll be just like I've learned about deactivating it so I don't see people's retweets. And that made it so much better. Because there are some people who like will retweet constantly the same topics over and over again, and I'm just like flooded, and I'm like, oh, you are, I love you, but I don't want to see all this stuff right now. Let me
No, I get it.
My turnaround was honestly and truly Cassie from Chosen Ones.
Okay.
Cassie, I don't remember the exact moment, but they started actually interacting with me, and they were one of the first people who interacted with me on Twitter. And that made me more intrigued in wanting to interact on Twitter, which just led to more people. Cassie was willing to answer questions for me because they also have some background in social media and stuff like that. And I was like, well, what do I do about this? And like, they were still new too. So I'm just like asking somebody who probably doesn't know us either, but they're willing to include me, which made me more interested in talking, which also made it so that I was more interested in including people who were new and trying to like give them the same feeling I had when I first started.
No, I totally get it. I wish I had got something like that. I kind of had an in of like a year and a half ago. I interviewed the cast of Wildcards from Saving Throw when they were about to start their ETU show. And from that, I ended up becoming friends with Dom, who runs Saving Throw, and Megan, who's a media manager basically for Saving Throw and Dragons and things. So like I had this in, and basically I then had a ton of friends of friends. And like I would meet people. Well, I've done a couple cons where we were at the same con. So then we got to introduce some people. But even then I shifted into Twitter. I'm like, yeah, hey, I'm that one guy that like Dom said, hey, this is Bobby. Once. Hi.
Remember me?
Remember me?
Remember me to that one thing?
Yeah, I get it. Even when you know people and you have a lot of friends and connections, there's also this problem. And here's the thing. A lot of us, even the really high up ones, are super nice people, and they're super willing. You could be like, I want to get these really high up people, and they'll do their best to actually do it for you more often than not if you're not a jerk. But everybody is so busy.
Yes.
Like, are you familiar with Quiddy Adabra?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
she's blowing up a bit more. She's been on Pollock. She's on several saving throw things. She's currently on a Dimension 20 show. I've been bouncing back with her. Granted, she kind of has a you problem where she'll then forget we've discussed stuff. But like we've been trying to get her on the channel for like 3 months. But it's Quiddy. She does so many freaking projects that like you got to find an opening, and it's just a nightmare.
Yeah, and that's the issue, I think. And for me, I am very much a numbers person, which I know that I shouldn't be.
We all are. We all are. It's okay.
I'm a data analyst as my job. Like I have been in analytical field for 2 or 3 years now. I was in quality before that. So like numbers are my thing, and that's all that's been my thing for work for a while. So when I see those numbers going up, it just makes my heart so happy. And then
Yeah.
I love that for other people too. So I'll like shout out people like, oh, you're 20 away. Let me shout you out. Oh my God, you hit 2,500. That's so great. And like, I'm trying really hard to do that with as many people as possible, but I'm also working a full-time job and then coming home and doing a podcast. And it's a lot. It's definitely a lot, but it's a lot. It's a lot of fun. I've met so many great people. I've tried to continue to be on top of it, but obviously some people slip through the cracks.
It's fine. I'm sorry if I talk over it.
No, you're fine.
I do streaming. I have to run my mouth 24/7. Dead air is a nightmare. So it becomes second nature. It's horrible. But no, I totally get it. I think, like I said, podcasts are the way to go. It's funny because podcasts actually, like if you do the CPM route and you're not looking at sponsors and stuff, podcasts also actually pay the best, which doesn't say much because podcasts don't pay that much. Like none of this pays well.
I know that YouTube has the potential to make money, but because like I said, I was in YouTube at one point. I never got to when I joined, I did BookTube. BookTube is not something that's gonna make a shit ton of money. Like the most popular people are still under 1 million. So I had no anticipation of making money ever, but they changed the algorithm to where it was like you had to have 1,000 followers or subscribers and like 10,000 minutes of watch time or some bullshit. And I'm like, I'm never gonna hit that.
I kid you not. The algorithm before that, I don't even remember what it was. It was something like 100 followers or something like that. It was much lower. 3 days before I hit the milestone, they shifted the goalpost.
That sucks.
When my channel was new, I was like, oh my God.
I think I was able to make money for one video, and I made like 3 cents. And then they changed it, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
I'm very transparent about how much YouTube makes me about $24.
Mm-hmm.
It's not YouTube has the potential to make you a ton of money because the audience for YouTube is massive. However, we are not all of YouTube. Yeah. Like you said with BookTube, we are niches. Mm-hmm. Okay. I will actually quickly pull this up because some of the biggest actual TTRPG YouTubers ignore Critical Role. Critical Role's an outlier. Do never compare yourself to them. Yeah. They're great people. They do great work. They also started on Geek and Sundry, which started with $1 million of funding.
Yeah.
And corporate backers. They had a huge head start. Most of the really, really good channels that I love right now came from people who used to be producers on Geek and Sundry. Geek and Sundry actually made so many of what's big YouTube right now for RPGs. But one of my tops, and these are guys I love, is like Webdm. The guys at Webdm are huge. They're 184,000, and they're considered massive. Now, granted, that is enough to make actual money, like to potentially make a couple hundred, maybe even like 1,000 or a couple $1,000 a month for an entire crew. Yeah. You're not going to get these channels with like 2-3 million.
That's a problem though. Like for me as like, no, this is what interests me. I wouldn't want to do something different to make more money. It's like, why would I do that when this is what intrigues me? If I'm not going to be passionate about it, I'm not going to do it. I subscribe to Webdm though to check them out.
Sorry, I was quickly checking. Like other guys, I've heard great things about that I haven't worked with. Yeah, but like XP to level 3, RuneSmith, these are people, and they're doing mainstream stuff. They're doing D&D 5e. They're hitting the algorithm. They're doing great. They're both under 300,000K. That sounds like a ton. It sounds huge, but the ones that are entire businesses, it's not. It's enough to completely support one person, maybe two people.
I think a lot of the ones that do really well are terrain builders.
Terrain does well.
Actually, honestly, so Black Magic Craft was the first one that popped in my head.
I was
They're
just
under
Googling Black Magic
300,000.
Craft. Yeah, they're under 300,000. And he's one of the best terrain, but not just because I love his stuff, but he's one of the top. He's a top tier person.
But he does he mostly survives, I think, on Patreon is what
He does. That's where we all survive, honestly.
Yeah.
If you want creators to keep creating, Patreon's where you go. If you want to do this full time, Patreon's where you go. I mean, it sucks because I was saying I was supposed to be on a one shot with you on Thursday, and I had to delegate it to somebody on my staff because I remember, oh crap, that's the last Thursday of the month. I have a Patreon meetup.
Mhm.
I can't not do that.
Right.
That's 80% of my income is Patreon. And while they're fans, and I'm really lucky my patrons are really understanding, I could just be like, hey, I can't do this. I got to do this. Can we reschedule? And they'd be understanding. But I don't want to screw them over. They're backing me.
And then also, like, that could lead to, if they did it once, will it do it again? Will it happen again? Will next month do that? And that's just going to lead down that spiraling.
Yeah.
No, I completely get that.
Yeah, doing a Patreon is key to making this be sustainable. And it's not just, oh, I have a Patreon, so you can give me money. At that point, have a coffee account. Because if you want a Patreon, provide things. Figure out tiers. And there is no magic answer for what it is, because depending on what you do will determine what you give. Like, we're trying out a new thing where different higher tiers get tokens that don't even exist. I just message you where do you want to spend your tokens. Tokens to spend on Twitch, because there isn't Patreon Twitch cross inclusion yet. So I'm like, I'm just tracking it myself because I want that. We do so much streaming now. I want that as a reward. So you got to figure it out. You got to make up stuff that doesn't even exist yet.
I know that when Greg and I talked about Patreon originally, we were like, okay, well, we can do the one-shot tabletop games on there. Like, that's what we were originally going to do that for. And then I was talking to him like, I don't want to make that a Patreon thing because for multiple reasons, but my biggest thing is I specifically didn't want to do D&D for that, and I wanted to do indie stuff. And if I didn't want to hide the indie stuff behind a paywall. I wanted to support them by showing it off as much as possible. And that's only 50 plus or 50 views maybe, or 50 downloads. But that's 50 more downloads than I would have gotten if I put it behind a Patreon wall. And then I said, we could think of something else, maybe additional games, but I don't want to do the one shots behind a paywall.
So I will say, especially for a problem like that, the easy thing to do for that is timed exclusive. I wouldn't put it like a high tier, but you set the video as unlisted and you let the patrons have it for like a week or a month before the public has it.
That's fair.
And then the public goes out to it. I do that with all my videos. Now, if I were good at this, I'd be like, all the videos are always this much early, but I have the thing of as soon as I'm done editing and it's uploaded, Patreon gets it. However close that is to its actual upload schedule, which means you guys get batch content. Like out of nowhere, over 3 days, I'll be like, here's 5 videos. Because that's how it works.
I get that. Like right now, I edit the games, so I'm ahead of schedule currently, thankfully with that. But I like to tease some of my friends because they're like, I'm editing our video for tomorrow, and I'm just like, I'm editing my video for 3 weeks from now. They're like, shut up. I say video loosely. But
my current schedule is I have my YouTube videos. I need to make thumbnails and like type in descriptions and tags and all that stuff that when you're watching a video, you totally don't think about the fact that people have to do all this other stuff. I'm good with the basic, like the actual videos till the end of October. Because I had an idea that I could do 3 videos on it because I didn't want it to be a really long video. So I split into 3 parts and one day I recorded it and it just filled up the rest of October. And I was like, thank God. Because I have a new show that launched last week and I'm like, I know I'm going to be busy. The podcast, this is why I need an editor because it's like we air on Tuesday. We're done at 11 p.m. I am typically editing from midnight to 3 a.m. that night. and then I'm editing most of Wednesday while my kid would be in school, like 8 to noon. And then I'm also editing again from 12 to 3 with whatever's not done.
Yeah, I can't do that.
To hopefully be done by Thursday. So I have actual days off. And that's if I don't have YouTube videos to do.
Fair. I try to edit. So the discussions we record sporadically because it's based off whatever is easiest for the other person. I give them a week and I say, these are the days that are good. These are the days that don't work at all. What works for you? So Friday, we didn't record until 9:30 at night because the person we recorded with was in Australia. So they're 14 hours ahead of us. And that was Saturday morning for them.
I will tell you the greatest time saver you could get, by the way, right now. There's other options that actually turn out more expensive. Buy a Stream Deck. Everybody thinks of this for streaming, but I'll clip into my editing profile as it pulls up, and now I can snip, I can do all of that. So I literally have one hand on my Stream Deck where I can do all my cuts, my clears and stuff. And then I macroed the mouse wheel of my button. So when you click the mouse wheel, the function is spacebar. So I can play and pause from the center of my mouse wheel.
Oh, that's cool.
So I can play pause, but I still have my left and right click, and I just two-hand like at a command chair. And it's cut my editing time in half.
Yeah, right now, I did start using Adobe Audition, which has been a godsend for me compared to Audacity.
Oh god, yeah.
But it's Control-Shift backspace. So then my hand's coming off of the mouse every time I need to delete entire pauses. And I'm just like, okay, Control-Shift backspace. Okay, back to the mouse, shift over.
Set up a macro button that's just delete, and you set it to Control-Shift backspace. And it's one button.
Yeah. I have to look into I saw one at Best Buy, and my husband was looking at it because he was streaming, and that lasted for like 2 weeks.
You can set up profiles for different programs. You can set up folders so you can have multiple things. There's multi-actions, which are nice. So you could have it like open a file, hit a command, close a file, change, like all in one button press. Like you can do a bunch of different stuff. But on Black Friday, they're typically $100 for the normal size one. I wish they were cheaper, and they're really hard to find right now because everybody's streaming because of COVID.
Yeah.
But I got it for video producing because we don't have a producer. So my left hand is my producer. I'm over here like switching cams, cutting audio on and off and stuff while I'm trying to run a game.
Gotcha.
But I went, oh yeah, I could set this up for editing macros. So I have it where when I hit start editing, it opens DaVinci Resolve. It changes my lighting to the lighting I prefer because I have an Elgato key light. That's just because this is where I also film. It changed my lighting to a level I like editing at night where it's dimmer but not dark. And then pulls up my profile with all my editing macros, and I'm ready to edit.
Fancy. I have one light. It's right there in front of me. It's the only light in this room.
Oh, I can pull it out. Till I got the Elgato key light, my main light was a heat lamp you'd get at Home Depot with a white pillowcase over it. And you get a daylight LED bulb because the LED bulbs don't run hot, so it's not a fire hazard with the pillowcase. You get a daylight white, and it's like 150 watts. It is crazy fucking bright.
Yeah.
But you use the pillowcase to diffuse it, and that's your key light.
That's fair.
But I went to film school. I know how to guerrilla this stuff around and just make it up on the fly.
Thankfully, the only time I've ever needed lighting was for the stream I just did, which was the first stream I've ever done in I did streaming before, but this is the first time in 3 years that I've been on a stream. But I've done YouTube, so that I had the big fancy umbrella things and spent way too much money on them that I didn't need to.
That's honestly why I got the key light, because I'm gonna break the illusion with my camera. No one else can see this.
Sneak peeks.
I'm in a kitchen. There's my fridge. I'm in the corner of my kitchen. And the umbrella lights and stuff are just too big, but the key light is like a 1/2 inch thick.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
And it comes and it has an arm that clamps to your desk. So I'm like, that saves me space. It's expensive. I hate how expensive it is. But again, I was lucky enough to have patrons. So we saved up and we got it. And it saved me so much.
I just looked up what they look like.
Yeah, sometimes getting the more expensive item, always gauge. But sometimes it's worth it. Like this mic I eventually upgraded because this I can go in and do my levels in the mic itself.
Oh, cool.
So I don't have to do levels later, which also means when I'm on stream, I'm leveled.
Yeah.
which matters and stuff like that.
Yeah, I spent a little bit extra money on a nicer mic than I was using my headset mic originally when we first started. And I have a Samsung CO1U Pro, and it was like $100 at Sam Ash, but it was like the cheaper end of what they had. And I was like, that looks cool. My husband bought it for his streaming and tried it. And then I tried it and I'm like, I want that. That sounds so much better.
I can't remember, is the LU an XLR or is it a USB?
It's a USB.
Oh, nice, actually. Now, I will also say for people looking to get into this, one of the best cheap mics I've heard, the Apple earbuds you get with your iPhone come with a way too good mic for what you're getting.
I have seen a lot of people, especially this weekend on the D&D celebration, so many people are using just the earbuds.
Yeah. Well, the thing is they sit right where there's a lavalier mic would go.
Oh, that's true.
And there's something to that. Now, if you actually take that and have like a bobby pin, so then you can bobby pin the wire to your clothes so it moves with your clothes and your clothes won't go over it and rustle it, then it just is a lavalier mic. There you go. Lavaliers are cheap mics that give really good audio. They don't get a lot of background noise because they're very small mics. They're meant to be right by the mouth. The only downside is you got to clip them to clothes. And you got to learn how to clip them where when you move, your clothes don't make noise because that'll blow you out.
I know that our goal, once we eventually get to a point where we're going to be recording together again, or our discussion episodes will always be online because everybody's all over the place. But our actual play, everybody is local. So we could technically play in person, but I want to be able to get the interface mixer, and the lavalier mics was what we were going to look at, because two people aren't 100% comfortable with being recorded. So if you have a very obvious mic in front of their face, that's going to continue to put that in their mindset that I'm being recorded. So the lavalier mics I thought would be a lot better of an option so that they forget that it's there.
Now, the thing is, you'll want to mic them up probably like a half hour beforehand. This isn't me coming from my D&D experience, that this is from my production experience, my stage experience, because miking someone up with a lav is very noticeable. You got to get up on them, you pin it to them and stuff. Especially if you can do it, if you have a wireless pack so they can move around. Now it's going to run a lot more, but wired pack, they can't go anywhere while you do it. You mic them up like 20, 30 minutes beforehand and then you hang out. It gives them time for them to forget they have the mic.
Yeah. I used when I did the streaming 3 years ago, it was actually for a TV show thing. It was not big at all. It was like 10 p.m. at night, very local channel. Did not get any funding whatsoever, but we used the wireless ones. I was such a nervous wreck, and you can tell because the videos are still out there. I will not promote them because I'll share it with you. I won't promote them because the people who did it were terrible people, but the game was great, and the people who ran the game was fantastic.
I'll do a tit for tat for you though. I won't say that. Actually, screw it. I'll say the name if you can find them. I used to be in a Rocky Horror Show cast.
Ooh.
And there are still photos of me, I believe, on their cast's website from like 15 years ago when I was Brad for the Christmas show. And everything that entails.
Go find those photos.
They exist. They still exist. I almost said what the name of the cast is. I'll tell you, and I'll hunt down the link and send it to you later. Because as I said, I was like, oh, I'll just say it. I'm like, no, I don't want to say it.
That's fair.
I have fans, but there are a few people who hate me, and they will dig that shit up just to troll me.
That's fair.
Because that's the internet for you.
I don't think I have haters yet.
Give it time. It sucks. One of the things you'll know you do it when people hate you. It is. Some people will hate you just because you're doing well. Some people won't get along with the way you do things. Some people will hate you just because they want to hate someone.
Yeah. I had in Play by Post, I had a lot of people who didn't like me because I was very vocal about like min-maxing and overpowered characters. So I was an admin of a server, and I won't name the server because I don't want to bash them or anything, but I was an admin for a server for a really long time, and I loved it but it was so overpowered. And I like every time something came up for vote, they're like, oh, we want to have blank. And I'm like, that's fucking stupid. Why would you do that? Like, you don't need 100% gold rate when you're supposed to get 30% gold rate on average. No, why? And people got really mad at me for like a lot of other stupid shit.
We basically upgraded a frequent troll I had to a straight up hater when they were trying to troll me. And rather than getting mad about it, I responded, here's a real good way to piss off a troll, by the way. I don't care. I just feel bad that this is how lame what you can come up with is. This is it?
That's all you got?
That's all you can come up with? And then they tried again. I'm like, no, what? You keep doing the same joke. Now I just feel bad for you. And that's when it like just a switch flipped in the person. And I stand by it because it was. Like I was showing people, I'm like, I just feel bad. This is lame. This is what you think? Fine, whatever.
Look at this baby hater. He's so cute.
Aww. That'll make him steam. It's hilarious. So sometimes you got to feed the trolls. I mean, when you're in this line, sometimes you do just to get the discussion going.
I have a couple of questions for you. So the first question here is from Nature Check, Cheryl from Nature Check. She goes, "What's the thing you least about doing this as a job?"
Okay, so I got two answers for this because one answer is what my answer was 2 days ago, and now I have what my answer is now. It sucks that there's a new answer. So a couple days ago was sometimes I run games I don't like. Just straight up. It's one of those things you suck up. Now I will never run a game that like sickens me or like they want to cover topics that I am not okay with. I will not keep clients I'm not okay with. But stuff like you say the min-maxers. I got a 5e game I run that I would not be these guys' GM if they weren't paying me.
Right.
I mean, the professionalism, I still give them a great game. I slowly try to be like Papa Bear, like I can show you better ways to play, but I still keep it within the lines of what they want because my job is to give them the game they want.
Mm-hmm.
And they told me what they wanted, and I said I could do it, which means I do it. It's within the limits of what I'm okay with doing, but I don't enjoy it.
Right.
Sometimes I'll find an NPC to make that I enjoy, but now the thing is I had to let somebody go yesterday because we have other streamers we started. We're reaching the point where I can't do everything and we're bringing in other people. And we have other people who've been running shows on the channel. And one of them never really got the hang of running the show. Like didn't really click until they had to do it that GMing for a stream is not the same as GMing at home.
Mm-hmm.
And realized how much harder it is. Then had a lot of things of like, I think I got a call tonight's game. Can we run a rerun? And even that, I'm really lenient because it's in a time slot I really didn't care about. So I'm very much if it doesn't affect me, I don't care as long as it doesn't hurt what I'm doing. So I'm like, you want to do this? You want this to be where you're the baby bird's nest to learn how to fly and have all your failures? It's in a time slot I don't care about. Fine. But then 2 weeks in a row, they just didn't stream. They didn't tell me they weren't going to stream. They didn't let me know. They just no-showed. And it's like, you just no-showed to work 2 shifts in a row.
That's quitting.
You're gone. You're gone.
In most contracts, that's quitting.
Yeah. So I hate that. I haven't heard back from them, but I basically sent the message where I was like, so you haven't streamed your last 2 time slots and you haven't told me anything about it. I'm just assuming you're not doing it anymore. And because of how things work, I have to go in. I got to change all our passwords. I got to, just in case it's someone who gets pissed off and retaliates. I hope they don't, but you never know.
Yeah, that happened in the play-by-post server. Like somebody got banned and then they still had access to everything and deleted everything that we had saved.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had to go. And it was one of those where like I'd been toying with it. And I'm like, oh, this sucked. This sucks. But then they went on and they played a video game with us that night, like a few hours after when they should have been on the stream. And I went and double checked. I was like, they never actually streamed, but they were on the video game. I got to do this. I sent the email. Then I'm laying in bed. I'm like, I got to go to my computer. I got to change all the passwords right now just in case.
Yep.
So that's what I hate most about this job now, being the boss.
Yeah, that's fair. World of Wilderver, or Wilderveer, which is a great game, by the way. They want to know, where does the revenue come from and how do you keep attention on that? You kind of answered the first part.
Yeah. So the revenue comes from all over. The bulk of revenue typically comes from Patreon. We have a new person who's becoming our media manager who's talking about getting us hopefully some sponsorships or at least some partnership. If you can get sponsorships, that's where your real money comes in. YouTube's not where the money comes in. Twitch is not bad depending on your community. We fostered a community that is willing to spend money even though they're small.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked really hard to give a lot of avenues in for spending a lot, for spending a little, for making you want to do it and feeling rewarded for doing it. So Twitch typically pays decent for us, but majority of it's Patreon. How do I keep attention on it? It's called I'm running a business. I'm not running a stream. I'm not running a YouTube channel. I'm not even running paid games. I am running a production house because I have so many things going on. I'm running an entire company that happens to do different things.
Declan, which I'm probably saying that wrong, asks, what's something you've learned from all this? Anything that surprised you or challenged you?
So, I mean, all of it, I'm constantly surprised by my players. It's a cheesy thing, but I push limits a lot in like our stream shows and all of that stuff. I'm surprised by what I actually succeed at. No, the thing that has surprised me the most, and this isn't a flex, though it is like, hey, we succeeded at something, was our podcast was literally, I wanted to start doing the videos we do on our YouTube because we have 2 YouTube channels actually. We have where I do my YouTubes, and then I have where I'm basically banking all our VODs from Twitch. They don't trust Twitch to keep them, even if they're highlights. And I went, all right, this show, I really care about the message it's going. So I want to do edited ones. I was going, well, if I'm already editing the sessions, I could also just render out just an audio file and put it up as a podcast. Like it literally is 2 extra clicks and setting up an Anchor account. So I'm already doing the work. We ended, today's the 20th. We hit 1 month 2 days ago on the 18th, and we had 205 downloads already.
Nice.
Which, from what I know of podcasts, it's not really my field, but what I know of podcasts, that's good. That's almost striking gold. I didn't expect it.
That's really good.
I did not expect it at all. So that's probably my biggest surprise lately. What was the other part of that question?
What challenged you?
Oh, what challenge? My biggest challenge was what I was telling you. And these are things I choose to challenge myself. I got into this field, and part of being in a creative field, I feel for a lot of people is challenging yourself and pushing and stuff. My Tales from 2000 game on Tuesdays. We're trying to do stories in horror that actually use the literary history of horror, using the supernatural to talk about bigger issues, not just spooky monsters, but what do they represent, and break that down and discuss it and like dive deep into it while playing a game. And I think we're succeeding, but that's been really hard because we're touching on very sensitive topics. I'm having to basically, I do most of my GMing improv style anyways, but like what I write, I'm having to write at like the highest level I've ever written. My GMing's being taxed.
You can't,
to its
it's
most
hard
extent.
harder to have an off day.
Yeah, you can't have an off day. I'm lucky again with surprises. My cast has done amazing with it, which helps too. So that's been my biggest challenge lately.
Weird Space RPG asks, which you've already answered this, but I'll shout it out. How do you make money from being a GM DM, which you've already mentioned?
I'll put it in the simple one. You need people to know who you are before you make real money as a GM. Get yourself out there on YouTube, have your opinion out there, share your knowledge, prove your worth either on YouTube, on blogs and communities, whatever it is, so people know who you are and they trust you because they are trusting you with their game and their money.
And he goes, is knowledge of the system mechanics and rules as important as a good story?
That depends on your client, 100%.
That's fair. I know that some like short tangent, Taz, at first, their lack of knowledge on mechanics bugged me, but then I kept listening to it and was like, oh no, it's really funny. It's fine. I'll keep listening.
Adventure Zone's a perfect example of you don't need to be a master of the mechanics. Now they owned it and they stayed internally consistent. They basically made their own mechanics and stuck with them. But yeah, especially if you're talking about being a paid GM, it depends on your client. If you have clients that want you to be a perfect rules arbiter of rules as written and know everything from the book, then that's what you need to be, because that's what they wanted to hire you for. If you have clients who want your stories, which most of my clients, that's how it tends to be, because I built myself up, I built my brand as that, then that's what they want. I am very transparent where if I'm changing rules, I let them know. I suggest you do that anyways, but you build that trust, and if they're cool with it, cool, then you get to worry more about story than mechanic. But yeah, it all based on who's paying you of whether it matters.
That kind of leans into, so I had 3 questions from the new Discord channel or
Okay.
server I made. Ryan, our DM, he goes, what elements seem to show up in every game you run?
Okay, so this varies. First of all, every game I run, I've been running games for over 20 years. But I go in and out of themes. Right now, from extreme games, there is a lot of elements of injustice. Can't speak. There's a lot of elements of injustice, of abuse, of survival, of growing, of people overcoming things that aren't, I overcame the bad guy, but I overcame life. That's just something I've been delving into lately. I will say within genres, I'm a modern horror guy. Like, give me modern horror. That's my jammy jam. That's where I love running games. I'll run fantasy and I enjoy fantasy and stuff, but something eldritch, something supernatural, things in that. Not necessarily like Call of Cthulhu. I actually don't run Call of Cthulhu. I've been interested in it and someone wanted me to. I'm not against it, but it's just the concept of normal people, relatable people to you and me in situations is where I lean. But I mean, I'm also running 2 fantasy games, one paid, one not. I'm running a no, it's not a Wild West game because we just changed it. I'm running a pirate game that somebody's paying me for because they have a game they want and they do it. So yeah, I'm very variable. I need to be.
Hope from Adventuring Guild asks, any tip for D&D or TTRPG podcasters or streamers?
Good audio. Clean up your audio. Learn how to level. I'm horrible at it, but I still learn the basics. Compression is your friend. Get everybody on the same level. Teach your players mic etiquette. My players are horrible about it, and I'm bad about it because when you're doing it virtually, it's even worse with lag. Try not to talk over each other because it makes editing a nightmare.
Yep.
But good audio. A good story will really matter, but that's super subjective. Good audio, once you get into the noodly bits, is subjective, but the basics, it either is or it isn't. And when you're dealing with podcasts, if it's bad audio, people just won't listen. It doesn't matter how good everything else is.
Another tip about good audio is if you mess up your words, just pause and repeat it, especially if you're doing a podcast setting, because I can cut the first part and then just use the second part instead of having to pinnacle it all together and make it make sense.
Go back, say it again. In something like this, if you know you're going to do a lot of editing and you can get a dog clicker. One of the little dog clickers. It's a classic technique for voiceover work because when you do it, it leaves a very big spike in your waveform so you can see where to cut. You don't even have to listen. Once you've done enough audio editing, you can see ums and ahs.
Yeah.
You don't need to hear them. You see them.
I've
you see the
already
waveform.
noticed
You know
that.
what they look like.
I say way too much.
We all do. We all have our tics. It's okay.
A different Ryan says, does the cast have a favorite moment from the podcast that you know of?
Okay. So my podcast, because I'm doing so many, I'm eyeing like crazy now. The podcast is Tales from 2000. Favorite moment's gonna be really hard. The most impactful moment on the podcast would be when Wally died. That hit people hard, and Sammy, who plays Wally, did it so well. Favorite moment, like funniest moment and stuff, that's gonna vary from person to person. Everybody loves the jokes I do with Nana, Wally's grandma, who's the erotic fanfic reading Trekkie, who's also an old black lady that loves making cookies and everything that has Starfleet emblems on all of her house because she's a Trekkie.
She's my new favorite person.
Yeah. Well, we established that she has a book club, but her book club is Star Trek erotic fan fiction with a bunch of old ladies. and they wear Spock ears for whoever's reading.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, it's so good. But that's our show. Is we'll jump from that to discussing self-harm by using a haunting to
Right.
discuss that type situation. So we swing. My personal favorite moment right now, they said the cast, but I'll jump in mine because I know mine, is it's while Wally was dying. Really emotional. Everybody's hurting. And Ebony is the richest girl in school character. She's Miss Popular, and Wally is smartest kid in school, the nerd character. And first of all, my favorite sincere moment is while she knows he's going to die, she just goes, Wally, you were cool. And I'm like, because that's all Wally ever wanted to be was cool. And I'm like, oh. But while she's super emotional, I also go, there's at this point, I should give some backstory. There's two Wallys because we have some timeline screw ups and things, which is how one Wally could die and we still have Wally.
Hmm.
So the other Wally knows something happened because there's two of them. Like you do that instinct thing. And I'm like, he calls and her phone's ringing. I'm like, you pick up? No, I'm with Wally. He's dying. Cool. Then you have to tell me what your voicemail sounds like. And she just broke. She got so mad at me that I forced her to do such an emotional 180
Mhm.
that I love it. I love doing that to my players when they're just in the most emotional point, and I go, yeah, but I know this is going to be funny, and you got to tell me it right now.
Two more questions. First, Andrew from First Watch says, "Are most of your games one shots, or do you have ongoing paid games?"
So there was a time where I did a ton of one shots. For my paid games, they are all ongoing now. I do campaigns. I used to do pay by the seat games and stuff. The management of it and the work in organizing it on top of setting up the game is just the cost is not worth what I get paid. Campaigns and setting up through Patreon, where it's regular pay, I do the games because it is a steady income and a reliable income through it. So they're all campaigns now. However, we have started to shift where now I scheduled our streams where one stream always has at least 1 month or 1 week hiatus between the two streams. One of them will have it every month, and we're going to do a one shot there for patrons. So we are re-adding in a one shot, but as far as my paid games, they're all campaigns.
And then Zach from DM Zach asks, "How do you manage campaign management?"
I do OneNote. That's my big one. And it's horribly organized, but I have a OneNote notebook for every game I'm running, and I do my best to keep that notebook organized. I'll type as I go. I'll keep up. The other big thing, though, I am not a high prep GM. Tales from 2000 is the most prep I've done ever. Well, yeah, ever. And that is, I know what's causing the supernatural stuff. I know the history of that. And I have a rough timeline of the town going back 100 years. But I still don't like highly prep adventures. My way I set up adventures is I come up with a problem, preferably an open-ended problem that doesn't have a set solution. I present it to my players, and I trust my players to make a good adventure out of it. So
That's cool.
my organization is when we introduce a new NPC, I write it down. I try to take notes best I can, the same way a player takes notes, really. I'm
Right.
bad at it, but it's all improv, so it doesn't matter as much. I don't have all the details figured out, and it doesn't matter if the details are right or not, because I run Schrodinger's campaign. Things don't exist until they come up. Once they come up, I do not change them.
Gotcha.
Unless I screw up, but that's a screw up. That's different. But once they come up, they become real. Until then, it could be anything.
That's
And
fair.
it's up to me or my players and all that. That keeps my prep really low.
Well, that is the end of the episode. So feel free to plug whatever you want.
All right. So I will quickly check all of this because I have so many links. Okay, I'm just gonna no, I won't plug a link tree. Okay. So the big one, our newest project, well, our newest type of project is our podcast, Tales from 2000. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. On Apple Podcasts, please rate it and give reviews if you're already listening. It is an homage to late 90s, early 2000s, like WB teen dramas mixed with eldritch horror. And we get into really deep, dark topics while still trying our best to be funny. And so far, everybody seems to love it. who's given it a shot. We stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/GMtable. Currently on Tuesdays and Saturdays, Tuesdays at 8 p.m., Saturdays at 9 p.m. We will be adding new shows. Tuesdays, Tales from 2000. Saturdays is our brand new show, Heroic Journeys, which is using a similar rules that we're using for Tales from 2000, but in a fantasy world with Fey Mafia. And we're really delving into what does family and what does friendship and all of that stuff mean. So it's a little sappier, but it still gets dark and weird because I'm a dark, weird person. I'm sorry. And then YouTube. If you look up GM Table, there's our YouTube. GM Table Plays is where our VODs go, but honestly, watch it on Twitch or go to Twitch. It'll link you where you need. So GM Table on YouTube. I can just keep going. I have so many projects. We have 3 books coming out that I can't talk about yet. So that's everything.
Well, I will put the link tree below if you send me that link. And then you can find whatever those are down below, whatever interests your heart content. Well, thank you for joining. This was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. Hopefully, a lot of other people did.
Thank you for having me. Honestly, you have any questions on editing or any tips or tricks, always hit me up.
Will do.
You know I have no life. Or I guess I have too much of a life, but it's all RPG stuff anyway, so it's the same. But yeah, no, thank you.
Go definitely check out GM Table, and then you can find us wherever podcasts can be found. You can talk to us on Facebook if you want to talk to Greg, or talk to me on Twitter, both at Beholder to No One. And keep being awesome. Bye, guys.